Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club. Today I'm doing my first ever original tag, and that is the Book and Booktuber Recommendations Tag. I just passed my first anniversary here on BookTube. I've had this channel now for 1 year, so I wanted to create a tag to celebrate that, and this is what I came up with. This tag is about recommending books and also giving a shout out to some of our favorite booktuber friends and their channels. The concept for this tag is pretty simple and there are only 4 prompts, but I think that I might go on for a while recommending books to people, so I'm going to go through the 4 prompts first and then get into my recommendations. So prompt number 1 is response. The person who tagged you recommended a book for you in their video. Let us know what that book was, if you have read it before or since, and if you think it was a good recommendation for you, based on having read it or the description of it. If you want to do this tag but you haven't been tagged by anyone, you can skip this question or you can respond to someone's general recommendation on prompt 4. Prompt number 2 is return the favor. Recommend a book back to whoever tagged you or whose video you watched, and tell us why you chose that book for that person. Prompt number 3 is pay it forward. Choose 3 to 10 booktubers that you want to tag. Recommend a book to each of them and tell us why you think they would like it based on their reading habits or tastes and the book. So this is where the majority of the book recommendations come in, and you can choose anywhere between 3 to 10 people, other booktubers that you want to recommend a book to, and those are the people that you are tagging. Prompt number 4 is open invitation. Recommend a book that you think anyone would like or that you think everyone should read. This recommendation serves as an open invitation to anyone who hasn't been tagged. I think all of these prompts are pretty self-explanatory, but I'm also anticipating some hesitation because not everyone is comfortable giving book recommendations to anyone. So I have included a couple of notes as well. So the first one is that if you can't think of a good recommendation for someone among the books that you have already read, you can just choose a book that you haven't read but that you think the other person might be interested in. It might be a new release, or it might be a book that you have had on your radar but that you haven't read yet, but that you think another person might like. Because we don't all read the same genres and we don't all have the same reading tastes, so it might be tricky to find a book within the other person's preferred genre if you don't read that a lot, but just pick a book that you think the other person might be interested in. The second note is that I don't want anyone to worry about whether the other person has already read that book or not yet, because we can't all keep track of what everybody else has read or not. So if you're recommending a book and that person has already read it, that just makes it easier for them to respond to you and say if they think it was a good recommendation or not. This is just supposed to be a fun way to recommend some books and shout out some of our favorite booktube channels. Since this is my original tag, no one has tagged me to do it, so I'm going to skip the first 2 prompts and go straight into my recommendations on prompts 3 and 4. So I would have liked to tag a bunch more people, but this video would be even longer than it probably already is. So I decided to tag a bunch of people that I feel like I have a good grasp of what they like and what their channels are about, and also that have sort of been with me, like that I've had a connection with throughout this first year on BookTube. So yeah, you might have heard about some of these channels before, but if you haven't, I highly recommend to check them out. They're all amazing, and yeah, I just love them all so much. So the first person that I'm tagging is of course going to be Pat at Book Chat with Pat. She always tags me in tags that she's doing, and I have a lot to catch up on. But anyways, Pat is a fantastic booktuber. We started almost at the same time. She is a retired teacher and she reads a great variety of books. She does poetry readings, and yeah, she just has a lot of things going on her channel, and I highly recommend it. I have previously recommended Piranesi by Susanna Clark and Beartown by Fredrik Backman, and I think that she would like both of these books. But since I've already recommended those 2 books to her before, I would also like to suggest an upcoming release, and that is Murder by Memory by Olivia Waite. This is a cozy murder mystery set in space, and our detective is a queer lady called Dorothy. And Dorothy wakes up in a body that isn't hers, just as someone else is found murdered. Dorothy usually delights in unraveling the schemes on board the spaceship, but when she finds out that someone is not only killing bodies, but also deleting minds in the mind library that they have on the spaceship, she realizes that something more sinister is afoot. Pat loves a good mystery. She has discovered a great appreciation for science fiction. She appreciates cozy stories and older main characters, and so I think that this book could check a lot of those boxes. The next person I'm tagging is Elmo at Elmosi, and the book that I'm recommending is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. I know that Elmo already has a copy of this book and wants to read it, so I'm pretty confident in this recommendation. But even if they didn't have a copy, I would still recommend this book because it's a vibe, and I think that it would just be something that they're interested in. And I had previously suggested The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, which I think they were already reading anyways, but that might be a bit too dark and heavy and like close to current events, so that's been put a little bit on pause. But I think that I Who Have Never Known Men is not exactly lightweight, but it's a little bit more escapist, and yeah, I think that Elmo will love this book. Next up, I'm tagging Reney at Beyond Books. Reney reads a mix of different genres, but is typically drawn to books with some suspense, themes of social justice and race and queer representation. She's always up for a new release, the earlier the better, and I think that this book seems to have all of these things. So a book that I would suggest for Reney to check out is Great Black Hope by Rob Franklin. So in this story we follow Smith, who is a pretty well-off young black queer man in New York. His friend dies mysteriously, and Smith is arrested for cocaine possession, and he's caught in this absurd situation where his class protects him, but his race does not. The book is set in New York and also in Atlanta, where Smith has family, and we follow along on this dizzying journey through the nightlife circuit and police investigations and a circle of friends who are coming of age in a new era. This seems to be a pretty fast-paced story, and there's crime and glamour and race and class and all kinds of things, and I think that this might be a very good pick for Reney. I also want to tag Gina at the Library Mouse Gina, and Gina likes to read contemporary and historical fiction, usually with a bit of emotional depth, but not too dark or heavy. When I think of this book that I want to recommend to her, I think of a sunset on a dusty road, and there's like golden light illuminating the particles in the air, and everything is like hot and warm and just nice and sunny. And yeah, that's the feeling that I associate to the kinds of books that Gina likes, and I think that I associate that with this book as well. And that book is The Art of Hearing Heartbeats by Jan Philip Sentker. This is a Swedish translation that I read, but it's available in English as well. And it is about a woman called Julia, an American woman whose father has gone to Burma and disappeared, and there's been some letters from an unknown woman, and yeah, there's something mysterious going on, and so Julia decides to go to Burma to try and find her father. When she gets there, she is told another story, and that is really sort of the main story of the book, and yeah, it's very beautiful and heartwarming, and I think that this book is something that Gina might enjoy a lot. I also want to tag Nicky at My Messy Bookshelf. She reads classics and mysteries, but she also likes historical fiction, and a strong female character, and she has been on a sea voyage kick lately. So the book that I am suggesting to her is Isola by Allegra Goodman. This story is based on true events, and it follows a French noblewoman in the 1600s who is orphaned and set up with a new guardian who uses her capital for his own gain. And when this woman strikes up a relationship with the guardian's servant, the guardian decides to punish them by leaving them on a deserted island to die. So this is a story of this French noblewoman's survival on an island, and I think that Nicky would enjoy that very much. I have suggested this to her before, so I wanted to throw in another book as well. And this also has to do with seafaring, but on the piracy side of things. So that book is The Ballad of Chakotay de la Haye by Bryndis Cameron. I hope I'm saying that right. This came out last year, and I'll just read a short description. This epic, dazzling tale based on true events illuminates a woman of color's rise to power as one of the few female pirate captains to sail the Caribbean, and a forbidden love story that will shape the course of history. I think Nicky might find that interesting. Next up, I'm tagging Melinda at A Web of Stories, and the book that I'm recommending to her is The Mare by Angharad Hampshire. Melinda is interested in history and politics and stories by and about marginalized authors. And this book has all of that, sort of, in a roundabout sort of way. This book is a fictionalized story about a true person, a woman called Hermine Braunsteiner, who worked as a concentration camp guard in Nazi Germany. And we get her perspective and her husband's perspective during the lead up to the Second World War and also the decades afterward and the consequences of that. I know that Melinda is already interested in this one, and she's already purchased a copy for herself, and so I can't wait to hear what she thinks about it. I'm just excited for everyone to read this book, but I think that Melinda especially could find this very interesting. Next, I'm tagging Mimi at It's Mimi Duong, and Mimi reads a lot of romance with some historical fiction and memoirs and mangas and manhwas mixed in. And so this book that I'm suggesting has none of those things, but I know that Mimi is always up for trying something out of her comfort zone, and I think she likes some drama and mystery, and I think this book has that. So we'll see if this is a good pick or not. But the book that I'm suggesting is The Dollhouse Academy by Margarita Montemor. In this book we follow two best friends who are aspiring actresses, and they are accepted into the Dollhouse Academy, where stars are born and secrets are kept. One of them is a bit more successful than the other, and so there's some rivalry there. And their hero and idol Ivy also goes to this academy, and Ivy is starting to realize that something sinister might be powering the academy's success and her own, and so she's trying to figure out what that is so that no one else is impacted by it. And there are also some threats starting to appear for one of the girls, and so yeah, lots of secrets and mysteries going on, and I think this could be a fun time that Mimi might enjoy. Next, I want to tag Mariandrea at Books and Bocadillos. She has a lovely channel, which is always very calming to watch, and she loves to talk about books and food, and I love her weekly updates with highs and lows of the week, and yeah, it's just like catching up with a friend, and yeah, it's a very, very lovely channel that I highly recommend. Mariandrea is also hosting a book club this year with Latina authors. Highly recommend her channel. And the book that I have recommended to her before is The Mother of All Problems by Nancy Peach. This follows a mother in Britain who is taking care of everything and everyone in her family. And then her mother is diagnosed with dementia and is starting to sort of deteriorate a bit. And so this woman has to take care of her as well. This book is a bit emotional and sad, but it's also heartwarming and very funny. And so, yeah, I think that Mariandrea would really enjoy this book. But since I've already recommended this before, I also wanted to mention another book that made me think of her. And that book is called, let me see, The Townsend Family Recipe for Disaster by Shauna Robinson. This follows May, who is about to get married, and she has always wanted to connect with her estranged Black family in the South. And now that her wedding is approaching and she also gets news that her grandmother has passed away, that desire is even stronger, and she decides that she can't wait any longer. What she finds is a family in turmoil, a long-standing grudge, there's a missing recipe for mac and cheese, and a barbecue on the brink of disaster. I think this book sounds very heartwarming and funny and just lots of family relationships, and I think that Mariandrea would enjoy this a lot. And I also want to throw in another book that might be on the heavier side, that is Untethered by Angela Jackson Brown. As soon as I read the description of it, it made me think of Mariandrea, so check that out and see what you think. It sounded really good to me, and I think that Mariandrea would like it too. I'm going to do some rapid fire recommendations just to save on time and still get some people in. The first one is for Bonnie at Bonnie Nicole Writes, and to her I'm recommending The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. This is a fast-paced mystery thriller with art, history, and the Holy Grail. For Chelsea at Libraries and Lattes, I'm recommending The Maiden by Kate Foster. This is an historical murder mystery set in Scotland, which I know that Chelsea loves. It has fun female characters and a bit of suspense without being too dark. For Bryndis at Bryndis Daughter of Gunnar, I would also recommend The Maiden by Kate Foster. Either this one or The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Both of these books are great, and I think that Bryndis would enjoy both of them. For Melanie at A Dark Corner of the Library, I'm recommending The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I have previously recommended Marina by the same author, and I know that she liked that one, and I know she's already interested in this one, but I am recommending it again anyway. All of you four are also tagged. And then I have two more people to tag, and the first one is Suey at Suey's Book Banter. Suey reads a variety of different things. She likes fantasy and YA. She reads historical fiction, I think, and memoirs and romance. She loves K-pop, and she's a writer, and she works at a library. And she has read so many books, so it's hard for me to think of a book that I have read and she hasn't. If you haven't read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid yet, I would definitely recommend that one. And I also have two new releases to suggest that I think that Suey might be interested in. The first one might be a bit more dark than what Suey usually reads, but it has a librarian in it, so I figured it's worth a try, and that is The Quiet Librarian by Alan Eskins. In this we follow Hannah Babich, who is a middle-aged librarian in Minnesota, and one day a detective arrives and tells Hannah that her best friend has been murdered. And Hannah then knows that this has something to do with their shared past and that something evil is coming for her next. 30 years earlier, Hannah was a teenager in war-torn Bosnia, and she was part of a militia there. And now she has her best friend's grandson, who's 8 years old, to take care of, and so she has to protect him and keep this secret about her past, and also trying to find the killer before he or she finds them. And if that sounds a bit too dark, I would suggest The Girl You Know by El Gonzalez Rose. This is a queer, young adult, dark academia mystery thriller about two twin sisters called Luna and Solina. Solina was supposed to return to her school, the Kingswood Academy, but a week before the final semester starts, she tells her sister that she wants to drop out. Luna doesn't want her sister to throw away her entire future, and so she tries to encourage her to go back and stay in school. But soon after that, the sister Solina goes missing and is later found dead. Luna is certain this wasn't an accident, so she decides to go to Kingswood Academy, pretending to be Solina, to find out what really happened. And finally, I want to tag Kat at Curious Cat. She has a wonderful channel with plenty of good book reviews and also some travel vlogs and monthly reviews, which I always love watching. She reads a variety of different genres, including fantasy, nonfiction, contemporary fiction, science fiction. She has a soft spot for anything to do with India. I know she speaks a bit of Hindi, and she also likes a feminist perspective and the topic of motherhood and like choosing to have children or not. And so when I came across this book that I want to suggest to her, I think it checked a lot of those boxes. We also read The Center by Aisha Manasir Siddiqui together last year, and so I know she likes that book. And that was definitely a bit dark and twisty, and from what I can understand, this book has that vibe as well. So the book that I'm suggesting for Kat to check out is Goddess Complex by Sanjana Sathyan. This is said to be a biting examination of millennial adulthood, the often fraught conversations around fertility and reproduction, and the painful quest to forge an identity. This is set in India and follows Sanjana, who has left her husband after a disagreement about whether or not to have kids. She's crashing at her sister's house and trying to get her life together and move on. But about a year after she left her husband, she realizes that she needs to finalize their divorce, but now her husband is nowhere to be found. So it says that this is a darkly funny and twist-filled psychological thriller and feminist satire of our age of girl bosses, optimization cults, internet mommy gurus, egg freezing, and so much more. So when I read the description for this book, it just screamed Kat to me. I hope that Kat will have an opportunity to read this at some point and let me know what she thinks of it. I also want to do prompt number 4, which is to recommend a book that I think anyone would enjoy or that everyone should read. And I'm going to recommend a book that I think everyone should read, and that is Homegoing by Ya Jassy. I just read this in January after having it on my TBR for like 6 months. I finally got to it, and it took me a long time to get through. But yeah, it just gives so much insight and information into African and African American history. And it gives insight into a lot of different time periods and gives us a person in each era to connect with and the struggles that African Americans have had to deal with, and Africans as well. We follow 2 lines of the same family. There are 2 half-sisters. One line is staying in Africa and the other is captivated and enslaved and shipped off to the US. I think this is a book that everyone should read and that anyone can learn a lot from. It's very well written and yeah, highly recommend it. Those were all of my recommendations, and I hope that you found some books and some channels to check out. If you want to do this tag and I didn't tag you, you can always use Homegoing as my recommendation to you, or any other book that I mentioned in this video. And yeah, if there were books that you thought sounded interesting and you haven't checked out the channel that I recommended it to, go and check out that booktuber because you might have some similar tastes. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. This is a cozy okay. Dorothy usually delights in okay. Okay. So this is historical murdery. No. No.